Quiet isn't empty, it has structure. Load-bearing walls, you just have to learn to read them. There's an architecture to the absence of the noise, a careful way the silence holds its weight and poise. Each beam of concentration spanning thought to thought, each corner where attention lands and stays, not caught but chosen, placed deliberately like stones that build the kind of quiet only focus owns. The architecture isn't found, it's made, session after session, hour by hour, carefully laid. Build the quiet structure, beam by patient beam. The architecture holds the work inside its steady seam. Architecture of quiet holds what the loud world can. Every wall a decision, every silence a stance. Architecture of quiet, room enough to think, built from the hours you stayed right here at the brink of something real. Most people live in open plans, no walls, no rooms, no door. Every sound from everywhere arriving on the floor of the same flat, undivided space where nothing can go deep. The architecture of the quiet builds the rooms you need to keep the work apart from the distraction, thought apart from noise. The focused room is low-bearing walls. It isn't just a poise, a structural design to hold the weight of what you make. The quiet architecture is the choice you have to take. Build the quiet structure, beam by patient beam. The architecture holds the work inside its steady seam. Architecture of quiet holds what the loud world can. Every wall a decision, every silence a stance. Architecture of quiet, room enough to think, built from the hours you stayed right here at the brink of something real. You thought the quiet was the absence of something. It's the presence of everything that the noise was covering. The idea that was almost there, the solution one breath away. The architecture was always standing, you just couldn't hear its shape through everything else. Now you can build here. The architecture of the quiet, built by careful hands. Architecture of quiet, still standing, holds what the loud world can. It holds every wall a decision, every silence a stance. Architecture of quiet, room enough to think, built from the hours on the hours you stayed. Every one of them right here at the brink of something real, still standing, still holding. The architecture doesn't need you to keep building, it only needs you to keep coming back, coming back. The room is ready. You've been looking for the gap between the thoughts. It's here, right here. Come in. There's a signal underneath the surface of the screen, a pattern in the process, not a glitch but something clean. The mind that overcrowds itself forgets how much it knows. When you strip the excess back, a different thinking shows. Not louder, just more honest, like a line drawn without doubt. The work was always waiting for the noise to filter out. Ease into the frequency, let the static thin. Something on the other side is pulling you in. Find a signal, lose the noise, let the work become the voice. Nothing urgent, nothing loud, just the task above the crowd. Find the signal, find the signal, let it through. There are doors inside a focused mind that open without keys. You stop demanding answers and the answers start to ease into spaces you were blocking with the weight of what comes next. The best work isn't forced, it breathes beneath the surface of the text. A hand that knows its movement doesn't pause to check its form. The signal is already there, you just have to tune the norm. Ease into the frequency, let the static thin. Something on the other side is pulling you in. Find a signal, lose the noise, let the word become the voice. Nothing urgent, nothing loud, just the task above the crowd. Find the signal, find the signal, let it through. Not perfection, not performance, just the clean line between what you know and what you're building. That gap, that's where you live. Stay there. The session deepens like a room you've never entered, but you know each familiar keystroke tracing patterns in the flow. Nothing from outside can break a current this precise. You paid attention to the work, and now the work pays back in kind. Twice hours without friction, but without the cost of doubt. The signal came in clearly when you finally let it out. Find a signal, lose the noise. It was playlist doesn't end. It becomes the next one. The session doesn't end. It becomes the next session. The work is continuous. You are continuous. Keep going. Everything that moved through these sessions left a mark, not visible in daylight, something carried in the dark of the ordinary hours between, a frequency sustained, a posture of attention that the session slowly trained into something you no longer have to think about or force. The continuous work found its own continuous course through the days and through the weeks and through the versions left behind. The continuous is not the playlist, it's the work in mind. No conclusion, only continuation. No finale, only the next. The continuous work has no final text. Continuous, no end in sight. Continuous session into night, into morning, into next week, into years. Continuous, this is how it clears the path ahead by never treating any moment as the last. Continuous, the whole of the work was always moving. Continuous, from the very first to this. The closing track is not a closing, it's a handing over of the motion to the next session. A continuous transfer of momentum, nothing lost between the playlist or the days. The continuous work understands the in-between is phase, not pause. A different mode of processing, still running, still connecting, still arriving at the next beginning, already in progress when you sit back down and start. The continuous work never had an ending, only art that moves from one expression to the next without a wall. The continuous is not the playlist, it contains them all. No conclusion, only continuation. No finale, only the next. The continuous work has no final text. Continuous, no end in sight. Continuous session into night, into morning, into next week, into years. Continuous, this is how it clears the path ahead by never treating any moment as the last. Continuous, the whole of the work was always moving. Continuous, from the very first to this. Every playlist you made from these sessions was a chapter in something longer. Every lyric a room in a building still under construction. The building doesn't end. You just keep adding floors, each session another level, each hour another window, looking out on something the previous floor couldn't see. You're higher than you were. The work is wider than it was. Keep building. The continuous doesn't need a blueprint. Just the next session, just the next hour, just the return. Playlist after playlist, and the sessions build a life, not free of idea that any of this was ever gonna stop. Continuous, no end in sight, keep going. Continuous, session into night, into morning, into next week, into years. Continuous, continuous, this is how it clears the path ahead by never treating any moment as the last. Continuous, the whole of the work was always moving, always continuous, from the very first to the next. To this, not an ending, never an ending. The playlist closes and the work continues. The session ends and the next one is already forming. You are continuous, the work is continuous. Come back tomorrow, come back the day after. The groove is still running, it never stopped, it never will. Continuous. Keep going. You don't fight a current this deep. You read it, and you move with it. Feel the pull, that's the work calling. Beneath the surface of the ordinary day, there runs a current most will never stop to trace. It doesn't shout, it moves in slow, impatient ways. Beneath the urgency, beneath the social haze, the ones who find it know it by the way it feels. Not loud, not sharp, steadiness that quietly reveals what matters from what merely makes a sound. The undercurrent pulls you to the ground, where real work lives below the waterline, where thought and effort finally align. Feel it underneath, let it take the lead. This current doesn't rush, it just proceeds. Undercurrent, steady pull, mind engaged and finally full. No surface noise, no empty tide, just the current and the work inside. Undercurrent, let it run. Undercurrent, it's already begun. Most thinking happens at the top, reactive, fast and thin. The undercurrent thinking starts from somewhere deep within. It takes the long way to the answer, but it takes the right one there. Not the version under pressure, the version built with care. You felt it in the sessions when the hours disappear. When you look up and the output makes the whole direction clear. That wasn't luck, that was the current doing what it does. When you finally stop resisting and became the work, because feel it underneath, let it take the lead. This current doesn't rush, it just proceeds. Undercurrent, steady pull, mind engaged and finally full. No surface noise, no empty tide, just the current and the work inside. Undercurrent, let it run. Undercurrent, it's already begun. The surface will always be loud, that's what surfaces do. But you stopped living there a long time ago. You just forgot sometimes. The current remembers. It remembers everything. Go back down, the work is waiting exactly where you left it. has already begun. Still running, still below. The undercurrent doesn't stop. When the session does, it just waits. Patient, steady, already pulling toward tomorrow. Some is inward. The drift isn't losing direction. It's finding the one you couldn't see from the surface. Let it take you. There's a control drift inside the focus session's core. Not the aimless kind, the kind that knows what it's drifting for. A gentle release of the rigid and the overplan that lets the work arrive by something softer than demand. The drift protocol isn't passive, it's a practice trust in the current of the thinking. When the structure turns to dust of something finer, more precise, the drift reveals the grain of the work beneath the outline. The rigid couldn't name. Release the grip, not the direction. Drift, but don't dissolve. The protocol is in the letting, not in the resolve. Drift protocol, controlled release. Let the chaos, the increase of precision through the soft allow. Drift protocol, this is how the work finds what the plan could never reach. Drift protocol, beyond the teach of method into the instinct of the made. Drift protocol, don't be afraid of the drift. The over-controlled session misses everything between the lines. The drift protocol moves through the spaces and it finds what rigid thinking left behind. The texture and the seam between the stated and the actual. The gap inside the dream of what the work was meant to be and what it wants to be. The drift protocol surrenders just enough to see the difference and then holds the new direction with the same commitment as the old one. Drift protocol, reclaim the work from what you planned it into what it actually is. The drift protocol is how the work becomes yours and his and hers and everyone's, because the drift found the real. Release the grip, not the direction. Drift, but don't dissolve. The protocol is in the letting, not in the resolve. Drift protocol, controlled release. Not the chaos, the increase of precision through the soft allow. Drift protocol, this is how the work finds what the plan could never reach. Drift protocol, beyond the teach of method into the instinct of the made. Drift protocol, don't be afraid of the drift. You planned it one way. The work wanted something different. You held the plan. The work waited. You held longer. The work waited longer than you drifted. Just slightly, just enough to hear what the work was actually asking for. And there it was. The drift protocol isn't a loss of control. It's the highest form of it, knowing when to release, so the work can show you where it was always going. Drift protocol, don't be afraid. Drift protocol, controlled release. Let it drift out the chaos, the increase of precision through the soft allow. Drift protocol, this is how, this is exactly how the work finds what the plan could never reach. Drift protocol, beyond the teach of method, into the instinct of the mate. Drift protocol, don't be afraid, never afraid of the drift. Drifting, still controlled, still moving toward something the plan couldn't have found. The drift protocol is always running underneath the session. Let it surface when the work calls for it. It knows the way it always knew. The distractions can't follow. You have to get there first. Breathe. Start climbing. There's a point above the chaos where the air gets clean and spare, where a thought can move without the weight of everything down there. You don't force the ascent, you just let the rhythm set the grade, and the climb becomes unconscious, and the fear begins to fade. This is not ambition, this is something older, more refined. The instinct to go higher than the limits of the mind. Above the noise, above the pool, above the half-completed thought. The space up here is wide and still, and this is where you're caught. Thin air, where focus lives, no interference. Only this mind above the tree line now. Clear view, no question how. Thin air, thin air. Breathe it in. Below you sits the inbox and the version left undone. The argument you replayed in the race you almost won. Up here none of that has altitude, it all dissolves below. And what remains is only what the work itself can show. A clean perspective, honest light, the problem seen entire. Not what you wished it was, but what it needs to become prior. Above the noise, above the pool, above the half-completed thought. The space up here is wide and still, and this is where you're caught. Thin air, where focus lives, no interference. Only this mind above the tree line now. Clear view, no question how. Thin air, thin air. Breathe it in. You thought the height would scare you, it doesn't. It clarifies. Up here the work is smaller and more important at the same time. You see exactly image moving steady toward a form. Not the version done in haste, but the version past the storm. Stay above the interference, let the baseline mark the way. The thin air keeps on thinning and the work expands to stay. Thin air, where focus lives, no interference. Only this, mind above the tree line now. Clear view, no question how. Thin air, thin air. Breathe it in, still up.